guys, it's Trisha with Upcycled Stuff. Today I want to show you how to make 3 different types of dog toys out of little more than a t-shirt and a pair of scissors. But first, the disclosure. As with any new toy, you should supervise your pet's use of these toys. Pets should not be allowed to consume pieces of any of these toys, and the toys should be discarded or otherwise recycled if your pets appear to be ingesting any parts of these toys. This first one's a really easy project, a great one to get the kids involved in. It's merely a braided tug toy. So this one here is pretty long and skinny. You can also make them kind of short and fat depending on the size of your dog. So for this project, I tend to use the bottom hem of my t-shirts. I just have a collection of hems here from other projects that I've used t-shirts in. I cut the hems and I save them here. And then I turn them into tug toys. So you'll just want to cut 3 strips, 3 hems. If you don't have 3 t-shirts that you want to sacrifice for this project just to use the hems, you can open up your t-shirt like so, halfway, and then just cut big strip. So there's a couple ways to do this one. So let me just show you this one here that I did. This long skinny one is actually made from 3 hems that I cut. So if you were to cut it off the t-shirt, you'd have loops. So I actually cut the ends, and then I opened them up and have, these long pieces that I can braid. So I'm going to show you the difference between how they look if you start with 3 loops. So just take your 3 and stack them on top of each other. You're just going to take them and tie a knot. Remember, these are dog chew toys, so I don't really worry about the knot being all pretty. One thing you do want to make sure that you do is get it towards the end of the toy so you don't waste a whole bunch of t-shirt fabric in the knot. So pull it nice and tight. And then you can take a binder clip and attach it to the side of a container, a cardboard box. You don't need a lot, it's just something to keep that held in place while you do your braiding. And if you're good with your toes, if you want to put them between your toes, go for it, but I didn't think that would be a very nice way to demonstrate on YouTube. So just take your 3 pieces and braid. Well, your 3 colors anyway. So I have 2 pieces in each hand and I'm braiding them together. This will make for a chunkier piece. You're going to need to leave a bunch of fabric to do the knot because you need to make a big loop. Get all 3 of your pieces through the hole and tug. And then if you want to just make it a little bit more fun for the dogs, you can cut those loops to leave some little tassels on the ends that they can play with. I know my dog likes long strings on the end of his toys, so my puppy does anyway. Okay. And then there you have, I'll show you the side by side. Each of these were made from, like I said, 3 hems. So these ones here were cut and opened up, the loops were cut and opened up, and then this was tying the loops, or braiding the loops together. So let's move on to our next one. This tug toy also uses just some t-shirt that I've actually cut up into t-shirt yarn. I'll leave the link in the description to the video on how I show you how to make this yarn from a t-shirt. You could, if you didn't want to go that route, you could use strips of your t-shirt, like the loops, and then cut them open so that they opened up. You would get a toy that's about, I think this one, yeah, this one here is about as long as you're going to get. It's about 4 inches long, and that's about as long as you're going to get from a loop of t-shirt if you don't want to make the yarn. So if this is a good enough size, you don't have to go that route. You can just cut some strips off of your t-shirt. I also wanted to show you the difference in the size of the t-shirt yarn. So typically when I make yarn, these balls of yarn, it's with 1-inch strips of t-shirt, and they will yield pieces that look like this, that are this size. This one here was done with yarn that was cut 2 inches wide, and this one here is 3 inches wide. So I'll show you the basic way to make these, and again, this has the ability to have little dangly pieces that your dog can play with if they like those. So let's get started on this. So start by laying out your 2 pieces of yarn in a cross pattern in front of you. Then take one end of one color of your yarn, it really doesn't matter which color you start with, and lay it on top of that centerpiece. Take the next one and do the same thing. So you have this sort of S-looking pattern. Then you're going to take the end of your other piece and you want it to come up through this other loop. So you're going to go over the piece that's open and through this loop, under it and through the loop. Okay, so it looks like that. And then do the same thing with the other piece. Whoops. Make sure you're grabbing the end. It comes over here and then up through here. Okay, and then you're just going to start pulling everything together. You just want everything to tighten up. You're making a knot, and it's going to look like a square when you're done. Okay, so there's what it should look like. Okay, now you're going to take, it doesn't matter which color, but you're going to take one of your strands and flip it back over itself. So this orange strand is now going to lay backwards over this one. And then leave a loop like this and hold it in place. Okay, grab your other strand of the same color and do the same thing. Fold it back on itself, leaving a loop, and hold it in place. So now you have these 2 loops. Okay. Then you're going to take your other color, one of the strands, and you're going to fold it back on itself but stick it through the loop. So you're going to take this green one and you're going to fold it back in this direction. You're going to put it on top of the first one, the loop that's closest to it, and then through the loop that's furthest away. So over on top and then stick it through here. Okay, so from the top this is what it looks like. Okay, over this one and under this one. Now take the same colored strand, the other one that you didn't use yet, and do the same thing. So it's going to go on top of this one and through this one. Okay, so when you get it through, you have something that looks like a loose square. Start pulling all your pieces together. And there's your square. Now you just keep doing this until you get all the way to the end of your strand, or however long you want to make your toy. And when you have a toy that's the size that you want it, just go ahead and grab up 2 strings in each hand and just tie a simple double knot at the bottom of the toy. And you can just trim your strings if you choose. These ones, I have a couple of really long ones down here, so I'm going to trim some of those off. And then that's it. That one's all finished. So let's get started on the third and final toy for this video. Now for this last one, you are going to need one additional thing besides your t-shirts. You'll need an old tennis ball. These ones I actually bought on clearance. I think at Target there was like a 6-pack of them. But any old tennis ball will do. You don't have to buy new. So this one here utilizes t-shirt yarn. So again, refer to the video link below in the description to see how to make that. And you'll need a tennis ball. I'm using 3 different colors. I'm going to use some blue, white, and gray. And I have another tennis ball. So in order to get your tennis ball onto the yarn, you're also going to need a utility knife and a pair of scissors. So make sure your utility knife is good and sharp, and so are your scissors. And we'll go ahead and get started. So I've gone ahead and cut 3 6-foot lengths of my t-shirt yarn. Anywhere between 6 and 8 feet should be enough. Again, it depends on the size of your dog. the thickness of your t-shirt yarn, how tightly you braid, but I find about 6 feet works for me. So I've gone ahead and folded it in half so that it looks like I have 6 strings. And the first thing we're going to do is work on forming the handle, the part that you would hold on to if you were to like have a tug of war with your dog and they had the tennis ball. So I take mine and clip it in the center to a container just to hold it in place. And this is, again, just a simple braiding. So what I'm going to do is braid down. This will be one side of the handle, and then I'm going to take this off and braid down the other. And this is just so I keep everything centered without wasting a lot of fabric. I'm just going to go ahead and start braiding. So then I usually just put my hand right under the braid to see if it's long enough to go over my hand. Remembering that this is going to be double-sided, so this is just one side of the handle. And I like the way that looks, so I'm going to just remove this clip and put it now down at the bottom of my braid. And then clip that onto here. And I'm going to continue braiding in the opposite direction. Yeah, that's a pretty good length. It's plenty big enough for me to put my hand in. So now what I'm going to do is take the center of that hand piece now and attach that. And then I'm going to join on each side my similar colors. So my gray with my gray, my white with my white, my blue with my blue. And then I'm going to start braiding those together so that I'm now joining the handle pieces. It might be a little awkward at first, but the bucket's not quite heavy enough. Once you get that first braid done, it'll be a little easier. Okay, now as you're braiding this, it may seem like this braid is getting a little bit long, but if you look back at the original toy, we're going to have a knot up at the top in the braided part, and that's going to take up probably a good 4 inches of the braid. So you want it to be pretty long. You can always make adjustments later. It's better to have a longer braid than it is a shorter one. It's easier to undo than to try to braid it while it's inside of the ball. That doesn't really work. So I'm braiding almost to the bottom. I probably have about 1.5 feet, well, depending on the color, I have about 1.5 feet left. And I'm going to stop right there. And I'm going to put my clip now down at the bottom just to hold it together, while I take my tennis ball and my utility knife, and I'm going to take on opposite sides of the ball, so here and then directly underneath it on the opposite side there. I'm going to make a giant X shape. I don't want it to be too big because I don't want my my braided t-shirt to fall through the hole, but I'm going to make a pretty good size X. And if you guys have the, scissors that you don't have to use a blade, that's great, but this rubber is really hard to get through, so I find that if I cut an X in the ball first, and please do this carefully, and cut your finger off, it'll give you a place to stick your scissors in and start cutting. So you take your scissor and just start cutting all these pieces off. Okay. So you want a hole that's somewhat round in there, and then just on the opposite side, go ahead and do the same thing. Now that you have two semi sort of circular pieces, you're going to take, it's easiest I find to use this small handle and to shove it through the tennis ball. Because when it goes through, then you don't have all of these little pieces that you have to deal with. You just have to grab the handle, and I find it easiest just to grab my scissors in there and pull it through. Alright, so you could have already tied a knot in the bottom of your toy, but I like to make sure that I have enough length before I do that. So what I'm going to do is tie a knot first in this braided part to keep the ball from slipping back off the handle, so I can find the right amount of t-shirt to use. And I mean, it's really just a guessing game. There's no specific measurements, but this is a nice distance between my hand and the ball where the dog will be grabbing. So I have a knot, now I'm going to just pull it tight. And then give the ball a good tug. And if that knot starts to pull through, because remember your dog's going to be tugging on that, and that one is starting to pull through, tie another knot on top of it. Okay? So then you have a really giant knot sitting on top of this hole in the tennis ball, and it's not going to go anywhere. And now I have just enough on the bottom. I don't need to worry about adding any more braided area. And I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to use a double knot on the bottom. If you want to trim off some of these little tails, you can, so they're not quite so long. And there it is, your third and final t-shirt tug toy for your little canine friend. Hope you guys have fun with your puppies.